Thank you for joining us on Planet America. Here in the Situation Room, I'm John Barron.
I'm Licciardello, and once again, we've got a situation.
President Trump is mentioned more than 1,000 times in the newly released documents.
On Monday, members of Congress will be able to begin reviewing unredacted versions of those Epstein Files.
And now that nothing came out about me.
And despite being named thousands of times in those newly released files, Donald Trump says he has been absolved.
Our guest tonight is someone who spent years on this story, the US editor of the Financial Times, Edward Luce. But first to another scandal, one that in more ordinary times would have dominated the news if not ended a presidency.
The bombshell report in the Wall Street Journal describing an unparalleled deal with a foreign leader directly benefiting the president and his children to the tune of tens of millions of dollars.
The Murdoch-owned paper reporting that 4 days before Donald Trump's inauguration last year, lieutenants to a member of the Abu Dhabi royal family secretly signed a deal with the Trump family to purchase a 49% stake in the Trump's fledgling cryptocurrency venture, World Liberty Financial. In the process, steering $187 million to Trump family entities up front, with plenty more to come. As the Journal notes, the deal marked something unprecedented in American politics. A foreign government official taking a major ownership stake in an incoming US president's company. And there's more. World Liberty co-founder Steve Witkoff, who had already been named as Trump's new Middle East envoy at the time of the deal, cashed in too, to the tune of at least $31 million of Emirati loot. But here's the real head-scratcher. At the time of this investment, World Liberty had no products. It had raised $82 million by selling a token called WLF1, but the deal did not even give the UAE the rights to future token sales, which was the company's only source of revenue at the time. On the face of it, a bit of a dud deal. So what, you might be wondering, did the UAE get in return?
Yesterday, the two countries also agreed to create a path for UAE to buy some of the world's most advanced AI semiconductors from American companies, a very big contract. This will generate billions and billions of dollars in business and accelerate the UAE's plans to become a really major player in artificial intelligence.
Donald Trump gave the Emiratis access to those AI chips, which the Biden administration had withheld because of a possible risk to national security if they fell into Chinese hands. Those chips turned the UAE into an overnight AI superpower. Was that the payoff for throwing all of that crypto money at the Trump family? Well, that's how things went down, according to Democrat Elizabeth Warren.
Now we know that the UAE greased the skids months earlier when it secretly agreed to pour hundreds of millions of dollars into a Trump family crypto venture just 4 days before President Trump's inauguration.
For its part, the firm has denied a corrupt quid pro quo.
World Liberty Financial tells ABC News the president had no involvement in the transaction, and any claim that this deal had anything to do with the administration's actions on chips is 100% false.
I don't understand, John. How could you possibly be so cynical about a deeply secret transaction backed by a guy who's sometimes referred to as the spy sheikh? Okay, all right, that's a bit cheap. A little cheap. I mean, he's just an intelligence boss. That's why they call him that. I mean, I'm sure if we saw a photo of the guy, he's probably just a totally regular looking... Oh, God, forget it. Does this guy ever not wear shady-looking sunglasses? What's going on? He's called the spy sheikh, John! The spy sheikh! By the way, the UAE was given permission to buy not just a chip or two, but talking 500,000 of the world's most advanced AI chips every single year. That's enough to build one of the world's biggest AI data center clusters. Also, I know it's hard to keep track of all this corruption just creaming down, but this isn't even the only highly questionable dealing involving World Liberty Financial. A company called Binance donated the software to World Liberty Financial to help launch the Trump's cryptocurrency, and a month later, the boss of Binance, Changpeng Zhao, who just happened to be in jail at the time for running Binance in a shonky fashion, he coincidentally applied for a presidential pardon. And then, after that, he generously helped put together a $2 billion deal in World Liberty Financial's cryptocurrency for the Trumps. And that deal also involved, yet again, Trump's great mates, the United Arab Emirates. This time, they entrusted $2 billion to a currency that had been on the market for 5 weeks at that point in time. For their part, the Emiratis said they chose World Liberty Financial for its business suitability. And a few weeks later, the Binance chief had his pardon, the Emiratis had their AI chips, Trump had a lot of money, and we had a great news story. Now, of course, the administration has a defence for all these shenanigans. Here's Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche.
President Trump has been completely transparent when his family travels for business reasons. They don't do so in secret. We don't learn about it when we find a laptop a few years later. We learn about it when it's happening.
Yes, the old "if there's no cover-up, there's no crime" defence. And that might be more convincing if we weren't talking about a secret payoff that the Wall Street Journal dug up more than 12 months after it happened. Not so transparent if you ask me, John. And how about this?
I love it when these papers talk about something being unprecedented or never happening before, as if the Biden family and the Biden administration didn't do exactly the same thing.
Okay? Joe Biden didn't do any favours for Hunter Biden's companies, certainly not favours that compromise national security like this one does. And remember, the guy making money from Hunter's deals, his name was Hunter. He wasn't the president himself. Not to mention that Hunter would have been lucky if he made a few $1 million from his dodginess. We're talking now about literally billions of dollars. They have raised the level. And also, remember, Trump calls Joe Biden Crooked Joe all the time. He reckons Biden was the most corrupt president in American history. But now his administration is saying that Trump is doing the same thing as the guy he calls the most corrupt president in American history. That's their defence. Well, in reality, obviously, he's doing much worse than Biden did. But anyway, it's all a bit ironic, John.
Yes, it certainly is. And you're absolutely right that in the Trump era, allegations of payola and bribery and corruption are hardly unusual and hard to keep up with. But we're trying. Last November, for example, a Swiss delegation arrived at the White House to ask President Trump to reduce those 39% tariffs that he just imposed on Swiss imports. The Swiss gifted Trump a special Rolex desk clock and a gold bar weighing 1 kilogram, worth at the time more than $130,000. It's already gone up to about $170,000. Trump accepted those gifts on behalf of his presidential library. I guess they use it as a paperweight or something, making all of that completely legal, at least according to the White House. But legal or not, less than 2 weeks after those gifts, Trump agreed to lower tariffs on Swiss imports to just 15%. Coincidence? Maybe, but it's not just the Swiss. Last August, Apple CEO Tim Cook gave Trump a glass plaque set in a conspicuously chunky 24-carat gold base. And who, of course, can forget the gift of a $400 million Boeing 747 jet from the Qatari government to Donald Trump, also destined one day to gather dust in the Trump presidential library. And this is the kind of gift that just keeps on taking, because the cost to American taxpayers to upgrade it to Air Force One level is probably less than a further $400 million. Probably. And who knows what the Qataris will want in return. Speaking of swag, last year South Korea gave Trump a gold crown and a gold medal to match, but the prize for the most brazen golden gift to Donald Trump must go to a group of cryptocurrency investors who paid $300,000 to create a gaudy 4.5-metre high statue of Donald Trump, cast in bronze and finished with a thick layer of gold leaf. Of course, that statue is expected to be modestly unveiled at Trump's own Doral Golf Resort in Florida, just in time for a G20 meeting in December. The sculptor, by the way, Alan Cotterill, is complaining that he hasn't been fully paid yet. And he also says those crypto guys told him he had to get rid of some of Trump's turkey neck and thin him down a little. But I guess gold leaf doesn't come cheap, Chaz.
Even if it sometimes looks cheap.
You're
John.
right.
And Alan I hope you're not holding your breath for that full sculpture payment. Might not be coming for a while. By the way, in case you're wondering, the New Yorker's David Kirkpatrick has been keeping track of all of the money that Trump has been making through dubious means during his second term. It's a conservative estimate, and yet the grand total so far in just over 12 months is $4.05 billion. That's not his total wealth, John. That's just what he's made through dubious means in 12 months. Nice work if you can get it.
OK, let's have a look at the latest developments.
Today we are producing more than 3 million pages, including more than 2,000 videos and 180,000 images.
And certainly those files do contain plenty of disturbing and salacious claims, none of which the Department of Justice thinks are actually worth pursuing. But in an email, Jeffrey Epstein did claim that Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates sought Epstein's help to, quote, get drugs in order to deal with the consequence of sex with Russian girls. Gates denies the allegations and says that he had no involvement in any illegal activities associated with Epstein.
I'm not surprised he denied it, John. Those claims seemed fairly unlikely to me, I have to say. They came in the form of 2 emails that Jeffrey Epstein emailed to himself, where he pretended to be a guy called Boris who was quitting a job at Microsoft with an angry email. In that angry email, in Epstein's mind, Boris would rant at Bill Gates with rubbish like this. To add insult to the injury, you then implore me to please delete the emails regarding your STD. Your request that I provide you antibiotics that you can surreptitiously give to Melinda, and the description of your penis. Does that sound like something Bill Gates would have shared with his employees and then to Jeffrey Epstein for some reason? Or does it sound more like something Epstein made up about a guy he was angry with at the time? I didn't find it convincing, John.
Not especially. But these files also contain correspondence that was between Epstein and the world's richest man, Elon Musk. This from Christmas Day 2012. Musk emailed Epstein to ask, do you have any parties planned? Adding, he really wanted to hit the party scene. Musk maintains that while Epstein hounded him to go to his private island, where many of Epstein's alleged crimes were committed, Musk always declined.
Which is interesting, because in December 2013, Elon Musk wrote to Jeffrey Epstein saying that he would be in the area of Epstein's island over the holidays and asked if there was a good time to visit. And Epstein replied, anytime. And then they exchanged many emails trying to come up with a day that suited both of them before Musk confirmed he would be heading to Epstein's Island on the 2nd of January 2014, which was, of course, 6 years after Epstein was first convicted of sex crimes. And in fact, the only reason that Musk didn't end up on Epstein's Island back then was because Epstein rejected Musk. Epstein, it turned out, couldn't be at the island that day because he was too busy. So I'm not sure Elon did always decline Epstein's invitations.
Well, this latest trove does have evidence that others, including the current US Commerce Secretary, former businessman Howard Lutnick, and former Trump advisor Steve Bannon, maintained contact with Epstein long after his conviction, and they had claimed to have severed their ties with him. In Lutnick's case, the emails suggest they even stayed in business together.
Yeah, this one I found very interesting, John. I think both these guys have been quite dishonest. Bannon, he's been acting like he and Epstein had an occasional contact, mostly for Bannon to interview him. In reality, this drop has shown us that from mid-2018 to mid-2019, right at the end of Epstein's life, Bannon was effectively an unofficial advisor to Epstein and vice versa, by the way. There were endless messages between these guys, and Epstein's crimes could not have been more well known by that point in time in 2018. We also now know that they even discussed how to hide Bannon's relationship with Epstein by using legal privilege, which is as good as admitting that they knew their collaboration would look damning if it was ever exposed. We also now know that Bannon sought favours from Epstein, like, say, private jet rides. So that suggests a patron-client dynamic, and that these guys were close. And as for Howard Lutnick, Well, he wasn't as close to Epstein as Barron was, but Lutnick could not have been more emphatic in a suck-up interview last year that he had nothing to do with Epstein whatsoever since he first met Epstein back in 2005.
In the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again. Really? So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
Oh, really? And yet, in December 2012, 4 years after Epstein had been convicted of sex crimes, there was Howard Lutnick emailing Jeffrey Epstein to tell him that Howard and his family would be near Epstein's island that week and wanted to know exactly where the island was located for his ship's captain. Apparently, Sunday evening dinner sounded good to Lutnick. Epstein promptly showed up to visit, and unlike Elon Musk, we know that that dinner actually happened because a few days later, Jeffrey Epstein was writing that it was nice seeing Lutnick. When this was all put to Lutnick by the New York Times, Lutnick said he couldn't comment about the island visit because he hadn't seen the latest Epstein documents. Then Lutnick said, "I spent 0 time with him," and he hung up. Oh dear. Lutnick might yet, John, end up being the first cabinet secretary who gets outright fired by this administration, which is exciting if you picked him in the sweep like I did.
There was a sweep? Meanwhile, President Trump himself is mentioned literally thousands of times, including in FBI notes that a woman accused Trump in a lawsuit of raping her when she was 13. And an FBI interview with one of Epstein's victims who stated that Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, once presented her to Trump at a party. But there is no public evidence that any of the allegations against Trump contained in these new documents were deemed credible by the FBI, and the Justice Department now has said that the allegations against Trump in the documents are, quote, false. In fact, Trump says these files prove he is innocent.
I didn't see it myself, but I was told by some very important people that not only does it absolve me, it's the opposite of what people were hoping, the radical left.
And now the president says it's time everybody moved on.
I think it's really time for the country to get onto something else, really.
Actually, if you're going to add up every Trump-related mention in the drop, the New York Times says just in this latest batch, there are more than 5,300 files containing over 38,000 references to Trump, to his wife, to his Mar-a-Lago residence, and other related words and phrases of a Trumpian nature. And yet, there's no reliable smoking gun in all that. So maybe that does exonerate Trump, or maybe they've just redacted the embarrassing stuff. I mean, for some reason, they redacted this picture. Can you guess who that man with the red tie is? So they did make some interesting redaction decisions, John.
Yes, and some interesting non-redaction decisions as well, Chaz. Some Epstein survivors had their identities and images mistakenly revealed in this release, despite those other redactions seeming to protect potential perpetrators. And the survivors still want to know what else is in the estimated 3 million other Epstein-related files that the Justice Department has but is refusing to release. Here's an ad that some of those women released earlier today.
After years of being kept apart, we're standing together.
Standing together.
Because this girl deserves the truth.
Because she deserves the truth.
Because we all deserve the truth.
CNN's Caitlin Collins tried to ask the president about those survivor concerns.
But what would you say to people who feel like they haven't gotten justice, Mr. President?
Something that people care about. Yeah, what did you say? Go ahead, CNN.
What would you say to the survivors who feel like they haven't gotten justice?
You are the worst reporter. No wonder CNN has no ratings because of people like you. She's a young woman. I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I've known you for 10 years. I don't think I've ever seen a smile on your face.
I'm asking you about survivors.
You know why? You know why you're not smiling? Because you know you're not telling the truth.
He does seem curiously sensitive there, doesn't he?
He should smile more.
Yes, he should. Look, this is all pretty clumsy from the DOJ. As it was, they took more than a month after the December 19 statutory deadline to release those files, and the reason they said they took so long was so they could properly vet the documents, and that would be fair enough if they did the job properly. But then only days after they finally released those documents, they were forced to take down several thousand documents and media for inadvertently including victim identifying information. Thousands of mistakes were made. And also, even though they literally only released about half of those 6 million pages that they collected, like John said, they said the rest included documents that could jeopardise ongoing investigations, breach attorney-client privilege, identify victims, or depict child porn. So they made assurances that they put out as much as they could. Despite that, Democrat Congressman Ro Khanna is certain that there is more critical information that has not yet been released.
We need to see whether the 302 forms are being released. That's where the survivors mention who the other rich and powerful men are who abused or raped them. And second, are the prosecution memos being released? This is the document that shows why these rich and powerful men weren't prosecuted. If Blanche believes that there is no cover-up, then he should release the 302 files.
Who knows? What I do know is that there is some important stuff that has been released in these files. They're not about speculation and rumour mongering. Like for instance, why was Epstein organising meetings with Vladimir Putin? That's real. That's in the files. Why was Obama's former White House counsel giving Epstein legal advice about having sex with minors? That's in the files. Why did Jeffrey Epstein file multiple Freedom of Information requests seeking records of a classified connection between himself and the CIA? Now, that very much implies Epstein had a relationship with the CIA of some kind, going back to the 1990s when he lodged his first request. The claims made by Virginia Giuffre Roberts against the former Prince Andrew. He denied them, remember? Well, they were supported with more evidence from these files as well. That's also important. And why did Virgin Islands House Rep Stacey Plaskett need Jeffrey Epstein's help to get a meeting with Chuck Schumer, a guy from her own party? And why did Jeffrey Epstein say getting a meeting with Schumer should not be a problem? That's a lot of very interesting stuff, which isn't lascivious at all, but it's there amongst a bunch of tall stories and ridiculous rumours. Although, John, the most ridiculous rumour, it wasn't from the files. It was from the brain of the king of ridiculous rumours, Alex Jones, who tweeted, "A major investigation is underway to determine if reports are true that the current New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani is the biological son of Jeffrey Epstein." Alex, never change.
Meanwhile, former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton have agreed to appear before a congressional committee to answer questions about their contacts with Jeffrey Epstein. After being threatened with contempt of Congress charges, they've now requested their hearings be made public. Secretary Clinton denies ever meeting Jeffrey Epstein. President Clinton, though, who of course has been accused himself of both sexual harassment and rape in the past, is known to have flown on Epstein's plane with the financier several times, although that was before Epstein was convicted on those watered-down charges of solicitation in 2008. Well, for more on this, we are joined from Washington, D.C. by Edward Luce. He is the United States editor for the Financial Times. Edward, welcome to Planet America. Having seen what you have from this latest release of Epstein-related documents, what do you think is the most significant?
I think the most significant thing is just purely the scale of Epstein's circle, the fact that it reached into every corner of the establishment of every kind of elite that you can care to name. There were people from those corners connected to him, and that includes outside of America as well as in the New York power base that he built for himself after he'd been registered as a sex offender, after he moved from Florida to New York. So it's really the scale of it and the sense, I think, in terms of the American public's reaction of there being a two-tier justice system, that really there's a whole different world and no rules appear to apply in that world.
Now, turning to specific revelations, people are obviously focusing on the more sensational rumours involving the biggest celebrities, but is there a less spectacular revelation from the files that you think should be receiving more attention?
There are two aspects of these files. The first is they're only half of the remaining files, so the other half is still sealed. The half that has been released, that was released a few days ago, has been heavily redacted. And generally, men who are in email exchanges with Epstein and are asking for girls to be arranged, asking for untoward things, their names have been redacted. And there are many, many such names over many, many years. Whereas the names of the victims, of the hundreds of girls, now women, who were victims of Epstein and some of his fellow abusers, they've been treated much more sloppily, and many of their names and their contact details are unredacted. So this really strongly reinforces the sense that there is a system to protect alleged abusers, but those who've been abused, they're barely even an afterthought. They're not a consideration all this time into this most famous of sexual abuse scandals. The victims are still an afterthought at best.
And what of the literally millions of documents that the Department of Justice has refused to release? Is there anything that either members of Congress or indeed a legal process can do about that?
If you'd asked me 6 months ago whether half of these 6 million files would be released, I would have been surprised. So therefore, one can't say never to the other half being released, because it's a dynamic situation. Public opinion is very hot. And there are some Republicans who are working with Democrats to push for the release of the remaining files. There are also moves from some of the victims to prepare class action suits. There are journalists filing freedom of information requests and so on. So I don't think the pressure is going to relent at all. But it's been made very clear by Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, Donald Trump's Attorney General, that that's it, nothing more will be released. And it's quite clear as she's expressing Trump's wishes. Now, we can speculate as to why Trump is so reluctant to share anything about Epstein and keeps saying, let's turn the page. The quip to that is, you can turn the page, but your name will be on the next page too, and it'll be on the page after that, having appeared 38,000 times in the latest release. But so there's going to be resistance from the administration, and there's going to be pressure on it to cave. And that's not going to go away. It's a standoff.
Now, you mentioned the redactions. Congressman Ro Khanna also noted that they haven't released the survivor statements where the survivors name the men who sexually assaulted them. And he's of the view that this is highly suspicious behaviour and indicative of a cover-up of some kind. Do you agree?
That would be what lawyers call a prima facie suspicion, because half of the law mandates the Trump administration to release all the files, having made appropriate redactions for the names of the victims, plus anything that breaches attorney-client privilege and one or two other areas of legal jeopardy, which would mean 99% of these files could be released, including FBI statements to the FBI with names of alleged abusers redacted. But they haven't done most of this. The fact that half of them are remaining suggests, as I say, prima facie evidence of a cover-up or something very close to a cover-up, a strong resistance to this issue going any further.
Edward Luce, thanks for being with us on Planet America.
Thank you.
February is Black History Month. Uh-oh. So President Trump decided to mark the occasion by posting a video on Truth Social, which included this racist depiction of Michelle and Barack Obama as monkeys. Something Black Republican Senator Tim Scott called the most racist thing I've seen out of this White House. Happy Black History Month. While Trump is yet to apologise, it was eventually taken down, and wouldn't you know it, the video was blamed on an unidentified staffer. Those dastardly unidentified staffers have done it again. Now, while this explanation seems like a cop-out, it does suggest somewhere in the White House there is a junior staffer who helps Trump post his tweets. And I have a strange feeling that job could be available very soon.
Calling all unidentified staffers. Can you locate the caps lock button? Can you thank people for their attention to matters?
Thank you for your attention to this matter.
And do you occasionally slip out of consciousness?
Despite the constant negative press, South Carolina.
The White House is now hiring for the position of Trump's tweet writer. Channel the thumbs of history's greatest genius as you enjoy super flexible hours.
Over the course of 5 hours late last night, 79-year-old Donald Trump posted online more than 150 times.
And gain access to the best words.
I know words, I have the best words.
Relax in the knowledge that your job is secure until Trump posts something racist. All applicants must be able to type at least 100 exclamation marks per minute. Become Trump's tweet writer. It's not a scapegoat, it's a scape career.
And that is it for another trip to Planet America. We'll see you back here at the same time next week or anytime you like on ABC iView and online.
And if you thought that crypto deal from before in the show was dubious, this week in the PEP podcast, we bring you Trump's most dubious lawsuit ever. You can find the new PEP podcast right there.
I always said it was dubious. Bye.